Hey guys, this video today is about angles and pretty much everything you need to know about angles and the different kinds of questions you could see about them. Now this technically corresponds with the TABE level D, so if you took the TABE with us and you took the locator and you ended up on a level D in math, this is something that might show up on the TABE, but it is also something that could show up on the GED as well. So look for this in the TABE D section in the Google Classroom. But just because it's in that section, that doesn't mean that you couldn't see it on the GED. So this can show up in either place. So first of all, just a kind of brief review of what angles even are. So first of all, we have lines. And I know you're probably thinking, well, Sarah, I know what a line is. I went to kindergarten. But in geometry, it's just a little bit different. So the reason that this example right here is a line is that it has these two arrows it has an arrow on both ends, basically. So for something to be considered a line in geometry, it has to have the arrow on both ends. It keeps going on both sides, and it keeps going forever, basically. Now, a ray is where you have an endpoint, and then the line keeps going on the other end. So lines keep going and they go on forever on both sides, but a ray keeps going only on the one side. They have a dot that ends it on one side. But then we also have this thing called a line segment. And so basically a line segment is just two dots with a line in between it. So it is a segment of a line. It's like you take a piece of a line and put two dots on it. And so the reason we have to talk about this before we get into angles is because all of these things are parts of angles. So an angle is basically just two rays put together. They share what is called a vertex. And you can see where these are labeled on here. So over here I have one side of this angle, so this is a ray because it has a dot and then the line keeps going off on the other side. And then I have another ray over here, so it goes off from that one side of the dot. And then basically the space in between the rays is what your angle is. And then this dot where they meet is called the vertex. So anytime you see the point or the dot, that is the vertex. So going along with angles, there are different categories of angles or different kinds. So probably the most well-known one is what's called the 90-degree angle or the right angle. So anytime that you see an angle that has this perfect corner right here, and they always mark that with a perfect corner, that's a 90-degree angle or a right angle. So anytime you see that corner that they've drawn in the space of an angle, that one's 90 degrees. Now, any angle that is smaller than 90 degrees is called an acute angle. And I can always remember this because think of like a tiny kitten or a tiny puppy, like, oh, it's so cute, it's small. So if it's a small angle, if it's smaller than 90 degrees, it is acute. So, oh, it's a acute angle. Look how tiny it is. Now, if the angle is bigger than 90 degrees, that is what we call an obtuse angle. So notice how it has this circle here on the inside, and it stretches farther than the 90-degree angles. And again, I have a way of trying to remember this. It's bigger than 90 degrees, so it's obtuse. I think of the word obese. So it's bigger than a right angle. It's the big angle. It is obtuse. It's obese. It's obtuse. So that's just personally how I remember those, but whatever works for you. And then lastly, we have one called a straight angle. And so a straight angle is just a straight line that's 180 degrees. So really, it's just a straight line. There's no, like, corners or points on it. It's just a straight line, and therefore it's called a straight angle. Now, there are also different names for angles, and this usually comes up when we are dealing with an unknown angle. So maybe they'll tell us the measurement of one of them, and they want us to figure out what the other ones are. So a complementary angle is when you have two angles, when you add them together, they equal 90. So let's say we have angle A, and then we add angle B to it, and they equal 90 degrees. So that means that they are complementary. So like if you look at this example I drew here, we know that these two lines right here are making a 90-degree angle. And we know that because they have this little corner here. Now, I know that this angle is 30 degrees, but I don't know this one. So I know that they're complementary. So I know that when I add them together, I'm going to get 90. So I'm just going to write it out like an algebra problem. So 30 plus x gives me 90. And I need to solve for x. I need to get x by itself. So I'm going to subtract 30 on both sides. So x is 60. So my missing angle is 60 degrees. Now, supplementary angles are pretty much the same, but they add up to 180. So complementary angles make that perfect corner. Supplementary angles make a straight line. They make an angle that's 180 degrees. So again, if I had a problem like this, so I have angle A right here and angle B, and I know that they are supplementary. They are adding up to 180 because they just share this straight flat line. Now I know that angle A is 120, but I need to figure out what angle B is. So 120 plus B equals 180. And so I want to get B by itself and figure out what it is. So I'm going to do the opposite of adding 120 and subtract 120 on both sides. So 180 minus 120 is 60. So that means angle B is 60 degrees. And so that's what we do if we get problems where we don't know the angle measurements. So if they give you a word problem and they say, hey, these angles are supplementary, these angles are complementary, we know this one, we don't know the other one, that is how we'd solve it. So we basically just subtract from 90 or subtract from 180. Now, sometimes we have these angles that are called adjacent angles. And so adjacent just means beside or next to. So these adjacent angles are next to each other. And so they share a common side and they have a common vertex. So you'll see here, they share this same point right here at the letter B, and they share the same side right here at letter C. And whenever it comes to naming angles, we usually write it out. We'll draw kind of like part of a triangle that looks like this, and we name it the letter that is at the point, or like at the actual angle. That letter always goes in the middle, and then the other two letters are on like the bookends of it, basically. So like this angle right here, I'd call it angle ABC because B is in the middle, and then this angle I would call it angle CBD because again B is in the middle and C and D are the endpoints of it. So if they're adjacent, they share a side, basically. Now, vertical angles, they are opposite of each other, and they always have the same angle measurement. So it's like you have these two lines that cross each other like this, and then your angles are across from each other. And so whenever that happens, they are adjacent, they are vertical, and they are equal. So angle E and angle F are going to have the same measurement because they're vertical. So if they're across from each other like this, those are vertical lines, and they're going to be equal to each other. Now there's also something called corresponding angles. And what that means is that they're basically in the same place. So the technical definition of this, angles with the same measure that appear in the same places along parallel lines. And so parallel lines are lines that run across from each other and they're never going to cross each other, like railroad ties. So this line that I'm coloring orange and this other one that I'm coloring orange, these are parallel lines. So they're going to run side by side and never cross, basically. And then we have this line that I'm coloring in green that kind of goes across these two parallel lines. And so basically these angles that are in the same locations on these parallel lines, they are going to have the same measurement. So like angle B is in the top right part, or top right corner, however we want to call it, and angle F is in the top right corner of this part. So they are going to be equal to each other. Same thing with the letter C and the letter G. So they are in the same part. They're in the bottom left corner or bottom left angle. So they are going to be equal to each other. And so this only works if your lines are parallel. But so they are corresponding angles. They're basically in the same spot on the lines in the picture. So I just want to go over a couple examples for the rest of this video, so you can just get a hint of what kind of problems we do with these types of angles. So here's one. It says, which figure shows complementary angles and which figure shows supplementary angles? So remember, complementary means that they add up to 90. So that means that this one is going to be complementary because they add up to 90. 75 plus 15 is 90. So that means that this one is supplementary because 135 and 45 add up to 180. So complementary and supplementary. Now, on example 2, they want to know which shows adjacent angles and which does not. So on the left-hand side, even though these have been drawn next to each other, they aren't really adjacent. So what makes angles adjacent is that they share one of these lines. And so the angle with 50 degrees and the angle with 70 degrees, they share that same side. So that means that they are adjacent. So if they share a side, they are adjacent. Now, here on example 3, it says these two lines intersect. Now, all intersect means is that they cross each other. Think of an intersection of a road. So these lines intersect. Angle A measures x degrees. What is the measure of angle D? Now, you'll see we have angle A right here and angle D right here. Look, they are across from each other. So, since they are across from each other, these are called vertical angles. So, they're formed by the same lines and they are opposite each other, basically. So, if they're vertical angles, that means that they're equal. So, angle A is going to be equal to angle D, and they said that A is x, so that means that angle D is going to be x, because they have to be equal to each other. Now, on this one, it says draw two parallel lines, cut them with a transversal. So, a transversal is just the line that goes through two parallel lines. So this right here that I'm drawing in purple is our transversal. So it basically cuts through these two parallel lines, so it's a transversal. So a line that intersects them both. If B measures 3x minus 10, what is the measure of F? Now, these lines are what we would call corresponding, or these angles, excuse me. So angle B is in the top right corner, and angle F is in the top right corner. So that means they're corresponding, and that means that their measurements are going to be equal. So if B is 3x minus 10, that means that F is 3x minus 10. Now, sometimes they would want you to go and solve for x and do all this different stuff. But for this one, they just wanted to know, hey, what is the measure of angle F? And we don't know anything about B. We just know it's 3x minus 10. So that means that the measurement of f is also 3x minus 10 because they're the exact same thing. So let's try a few of these problems together. In the figure below, angle A measures 170 degrees. What is the measure of angle B? What's the measure of angle D? And what do you know about the measures of A and B? So, if we look at this, look at how A and B are right next to each other. And they basically both, when you put them together, they would just make a straight line. So that means that when we add them together, since it makes a straight line when they're smushed together, smushed, it's a technical math term, that means that it's going to equal 180 degrees. Now, I know that angle A is 170. So basically, I'm going to take 180 and subtract 170 to figure out what B is. So what's 180 minus 170? 10. So that means that angle B is 10 degrees. Sorry. So we really should be writing like the little degree symbol. I haven't been doing that. So learn from my mistake. And so angle A is 170. Angle B is 10. What is the measure of angle D? Now angle D is right across from this. So if they are right across from each other, these are vertical angles. So I know that angle A and D are vertical. So since they're vertical, I know that they're going to be the same. So that means that angle D is also going to be 170 degrees. And they want to know, well, what do you know about the measures of angle A and angle B? Well, I know that A and B are going to add up together to 180. I know that they are what's called supplementary. So if they add up to 180, if they're right next to each other on a straight line, I know that they're supplementary. All right, let's look at this one. Kyle draws two adjacent angles that are supplementary. The measure of the first angle is x minus 5. The measure of the other is 2x plus 35. What is the measure of each angle? So we have to figure out what the measures of these angles are. So remember, with word problems, we need to look at what we know and what they're asking. So they want to know what's the measure of each angle. So that means we're going to be finding two different answers. They want to know both of these. Now, it also says that the angles are supplementary. Now, if it's supplementary, that means that they add up to what? To 180. Now let's look at what else we know. We know that the first angle is x minus 5. The measure of the other angle is 2x plus 35. So what we're going to do, we're basically taking these two parts and we're going to add them together. So x minus 5 plus 2x plus 35. And so these are supplementary. So that means they're going to add up together to 180. So now this is just like a regular algebra problem. I want to solve for x. So I am going to draw a line separating my equal sign and the rest of my problem. Now the first thing I'm going to do is look for what's called like terms. What are letters that are the same that are on the same side of the equals? Well, I have an x and I have a 2x. So those have the same letter, I can add them together. So what is a 2x plus x? Or imagine there's a 1 in front of it. So what's 2x plus 1x? 3x. So you just add them like you would regular numbers. 2 plus 1 is 3. And then just stick the letter x on there. So I'm done with these. So I'm going to mark those out. But now I have a minus 5 and a plus 35. So really that's like subtraction. So what's 35 minus 5? 30. So I have 3x plus 30 And then I'm going to bring down my equals and my 180. So now I want to get my x's on one side and my numbers on the other. So I want to move this 30 over here to be with the 180 so that I can separate my letters and numbers. But I got to do the opposite of adding 30 to move it over. So what's the opposite of adding 30? Subtracting 30. So I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides, and that gives me 150 equals, and then I'm just going to bring down this 3x. So now I've got 3x equals 150. So basically what I'm saying is 3 times something is 150. So what's the opposite of multiplying by 3? Dividing by 3. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. So 150 divided by 3 gives me 50. So x equals 50. But here's the thing. I figured out what x is, but I'm still not done. I have to figure out what is the measure of each angle. So I'm going to erase some of this stuff. So I know that x equals 50. So I'm going to go back to my problem. Okay, I know that one angle is x minus 5. My other angle is 2x plus 35. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this 50 and I'm going to put it in for x in both of these. So 50 minus 5 is 45, so there's one angle. Oops. And then I'm just going to plug 50 into this side. So 2 times 50 plus 35. So what's 2 times 50? 100. And then what's 100 plus 35? 135. So I get my measures of both angles, but these are supposed to be supplementary. So let's make sure that they add up to 180, and they do. So what's the measure of each angle? The angles are 45 and 135. Alright, so that's it for this video. So go to the Google Classroom and do the self-check to make sure that you understood this. And be sure to watch out for other videos, other material we're putting in the Google Classroom. And if you've got any questions or anything, feel free to get in contact with us, email us, call us, so that we can help you. You have a great day.